To get to his office during his 3-year tenure at Alabama, Lane Kiffin had to walk by a framed picture of Terrence Cody's game-saving field goal block to beat Kiffin's 2009 Tennessee team. It became a daily reminder of not just a heartbreaking moment but also a time when the SEC was clearly the nation's most dominant conference. Urban Meyer and Tim Tebow were still at Florida, Nick Saban and Mark Ingram at Alabama. A.J. Green was catching passes for Mark Richt at Georgia, Patrick Peterson was locking down defenders for LSU's Les Miles, and Eric Berry was roaming the secondary for Kiffin's volumes. And leaping right behind Cody on that famed field goal block? None other than Julio Jones. "I don't claim to be the best historian of the SEC," said Kiffin. "But I have a hard time imagining there was ever a stronger roster of players and coaches on all the teams than when we got to the SEC in '09. 5 years later, in 2014, the former USC head coach returned to the conference to be Saban's offensive coordinator. Soon he began noticing the conference had changed. At Tennessee, every week when you went to game plan, there was a dominant, dynamic player in the front seven you had to game plan around. That's very rare," said FAU's head coach. "When I came back the second time, the first year, there were still good coaches and similar kind of players, though not quite as strong. By 2016, he said, it was clear that what Nick Saban was doing the previous 3 to 4 years, just dominating recruiting, had changed the conference. The once ultra-deep league was now Alabama and everybody else. Outside of the 14-1 Tide, which came within 1 second of winning yet another national championship, no other team in the conference finished with fewer than 4 losses in 2016. A league that in 2012 placed 5 teams in the final AP Top 10 had its second highest team, 8 for LSU, finished 13th. And a conference that went 65-32 in bowl games during its dominant 2006-15 run went 6-7 this past postseason. None of this is to say the SEC is suddenly a bad conference, but clearly its long-standing status as the nation's undisputed best is over. When you don't really have anyone to speak of in the SEC East, and now the SEC West suddenly slips, you've got a conference that people are saying may only be the 3rd best conference, said Rivals.com National Recruiting Director Mike Farrell. "It's 1A and 1B to me with the ACC and the Big Ten." The SEC's regression to the pack did not happen overnight. And it's hardly the result of any one factor. In speaking with various experts connected to the conference, 4 key themes emerged. In December 2012, 3-time Big Ten champion Brett Bielema shocked the college football world by leaving Wisconsin for Arkansas. At the time, the move encapsulated the notion that SEC schools are more committed to football success than other conferences and therefore can land the best coaches. But that's not how the years since have played out. Bielema was one of 4 new coaches in the conference for 2013, joining Auburn's Gus Malzahn, Tennessee's Butch Jones and Kentucky's Mark Stoops. Together they have won a combined 53.4% of their games. Malzahn took the Tigers to the BCS championship game his first season but is just 23-16 since. Jones has signed top 10 recruiting classes but failed to crack 8-4 in the regular season. Stoops is coming off his first winning season at 7-6. Bielema, who went 68-24 at Wisconsin, is just 25-26 in Fayetteville. "Early success maybe hurt those guys more than it helped them," said Barrett Sallee, host of the SEC Smothered and Covered podcast. "For all the grief we gave Butch Jones for not managing that team well last year, he built those expectations with his brick-by-brick mantra. He actually did build something back to the point where they should be contending. Those guys have tested success, so when it takes a step back, everyone wonders why. Consider that in the Big Ten over the same time period, Ohio State's Urban Meyer, Michigan's Jim Harbaugh and Penn State's James Franklin all arrived to considerable hype and have all delivered on it. More recently, the SEC since 2015 has lost 4 head coaches, South Carolina's Steve Spurrier, Georgia's Rick, Missouri's Gary Pinkel and LSU's Miles who had all been at their schools for more than a decade. Admittedly, none of them went out on top, and perhaps that's part of the problem. LSU held on to Lay Miles way too long. "He was a dinosaur," said Sallee. Spurrier was living off Jadeveon, Clowney and Marcus Lattimore at the end. Still, consider the resumes of those veterans' replacements, two first-time head coaches, Missouri's Barry Odom and Georgia's Kirby Smart, and two previously fired by other SEC schools, South Carolina's Will Muschamp and